All right, good morning and welcome to the Committee on Energy and Environmental Protection. It is Tuesday, March 15th at 9 a.m. We are here in conference room 325. And first up on the agenda is Senate Bill 3192 SD2 relating to natural resource management. This is the green fees bill. And first up we have Hawaii Tourism Authority in support, but not present. DLNR, Dave Smith.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Leah Laramie on behalf of DLNR. We'd like to stand on our testimony and support with offering comments.
Thank you. And then we have Department of Budget and Finance comments. Mahiku Aomai in support, Hackbed, Hapa, Kua'aina Ulu Alamo all in support, Wild Kids in support, Tax Foundation.
Good morning, Chair, members, Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We are concerned that the bill as it's currently drafted is unconstitutional because there is something in the US Constitution called the Privileges and Immunities Clause, stating that there are certain fundamental rights that we have as citizens of the United States to visit anywhere in our other sister states that are not closed to the public. We understand that there are some attractions that have successfully implemented user fees, such as Hanuma Bay, but this one looks more like a tax and and we think it may be problematic for that reason. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And then we have Nature Conservancy in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. I'm Anthony Ching on behalf of the Nature Conservancy. We want to thank you for having this hearing today on SB 392, which we strongly support, to establish the green fee or visitor impact fee. We believe that this would make a transformational impact on natural resource management and conservation in Hawaii. As we face, major impacts from climate change, we feel like this will have will provide great opportunity to build resiliency and sustainability throughout the state. So again, thank you for having this hearing, and we ask for your support of the bill. Mahalo. Thank
you. And then we have Resources Legacy Fund in support, Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition in support, Surfrider Foundation in support, HGEA in support, Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association, Maui Hotel and Lodging Association, Kaleo Onaopia, all in support. Then we have Jack Kittinger in support, signed up to be present.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of the bill. I stand on my written testimony. I've also been working on this for the last half decade, so if there are any questions regarding the policy model that I can help answer, be happy to do so. And thank you for giving this important bill a hearing.
Thank you. And then we have a number of other individuals all in support, and we did have one other person signed up to be here in person. That's Carissa Cabrera.
Aloha, everyone. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Carissa Cabrera. I'm a marine conservationist based on Oahu, and I've also been part of the Hawaii Green Fee Initiative for about the past year. I stand on my written testimony in strong support of this bill and want to emphasize the timeliness of this program being implemented as we continue to face a closing window of opportunity when it comes to protecting and restoring our natural resources. I'd also like to emphasize that we have strong support from industry leaders, sectors, and most importantly, our community and residents. A memo that was released last month emphasized that over half, 70 to 80% of our residents support a green fee so that visitors can share and pay their fair share of visiting and their use of our natural resources. So thank you so much for hearing all of our testimony today and considering the passage of this bill.
Great, thank you. And I guess there are a total of 23 individual testimonies in support, 1 in opposition and 1 comments. Was there anyone else here who wanted to testify on this? If not, members, any questions? Rep. Martin.
I have a question for DLNR. I'm very supportive of this, but I do wonder, how would it work for venues that either have fees or we are planning to have fees that are site specific when we have this more general green fee in addition?
So mahalo for your question. Yeah, I don't think that we have fully decided on that yet, but I think that what we would likely do is look at it by case basis and look at the impacts that it would have on each different site. They have different very specific needs, which is why we have those fees. And there's also the maintenance of the parking areas and the other infrastructure there. So I think we'd have to look at that case by case.
Any other questions, members? I have a quick question, I guess, maybe for both Leah and for Jack. The testimony from DLNR indicated that you felt the Legacy Commission to sort of help manage and allocate the funds wasn't necessary, that you would just do it internally. So I'm wondering, I guess for Jack first, what you think is the added benefit of having the Legacy Commission piece remain in there?
It's a great question, Chair. And I fully respect and understand DLNR's position on this. We looked at a dozen green fee systems all across the world, some national, some subnational, and the systems that have a stakeholder mechanism, such as the commission that's been described in this bill, largely are much more successful in having stakeholder buy-in. And the commission part of the bill that was designed into this draft was done so very intentionally so that the tourism sector, the nonprofit sector, the natural resources community, et cetera, would have seats at the table to determine how this funding would be used to best protect the state's natural resources. It is something to manage, of course, creating a commission like this, and there are analogs of like this across the state, right? So I can understand that it does add a complication in terms of a management process and a body that would have to be stood up. But we feel, for those of us who have looked at these other systems, that it really has been a marker of success, particularly in generating buy-in for the tourism industry, which itself invests quite a bit in sustainability efforts and would have a seat at the table to help determine this. The only other thought I would add is that I sit on the Palau Protected Area Network Fund Board, which is the green fee board for the Republic of Palau. And that stakeholder forum is tremendously valuable for helping determine how the funding can be used, for helping the management authorities, in our case, the DLNR and other agencies, help drive decision-making for maximum impact. So I've had a firsthand experience with that, and I think it would be a beneficial part of the model to consider here.
And then a quick follow-up question, and then I'll go back to Leah to ask her about the Legacy Commission piece. But for you, Jack, as well, I know there was testimony from Tax Foundation with concerns about the constitutionality of this bill, but I believe that in the drafting of it, the Attorney General's office was consulted, and typically they do submit testimony when there's constitutionality concerns. But do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I mean, it's my understanding the AG reviewed this bill prior to its introduction in the Senate and offered comments that were put into the bill. We also had a legal analysis done by a very reputable law firm on these constitutionality issues because, as the Tax Foundation points out, they are very important to consider. However, the policy model that's in this bill does not run afoul of any constitutional issues. It is based on a fee model, which we use all over the state and which stands on a very strong legal footing. So we are not charging people to enter Hawaii. That would create a legal liability. This is very similar to a lot of the fee programs we have at sites, and would simply extend that to areas, the broader set of natural resource zones, that we don't have pinch points like a kiosk or a parking lot to manage visitor interactions. So in that case, I think we're on very strong legal footing. We've had a lot of attention into that.
Great, thanks. And then for Leah, just to go back to the question about the Legacy Commission, if you want to comment on what is DLNR's position on, I guess the testimony was that it's unnecessary, but I wonder what you feel the drawback is to having a commission versus just internally managing the funds yourself.
Chair, this is David Smith.
Oh,
I'm
David, go ahead.
Division of Forestry and Wildlife. We've been working really closely with Jack and others to try to figure out how this thing would be administered. We don't have a real problem with Legacy Commission. It's, you know, some of the other ones are, it just provides an additional layer of bureaucracy sometimes, but I hear what Jack's saying. We don't disagree that having a stakeholder group might be a positive thing. So it's not a deal breaker for us. Thanks.
Okay, great. And final question for you or Jack, I guess. The dollar amount of what the fee would be has been blank throughout this whole entire process. So what is the presumption? What would we be looking at? What's the recommendation?
David, do you want to take that first? I certainly have thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack. You've done more research on it. I mean, I have some experience with plow and whatnot, but go ahead.
Yeah, the amount has been blank because essentially I think there's an opportunity to determine what's the right entry level fee for this. I mean, there was analyses going back to the 1970s on what was proposed and then eventually became the TAT on how much of a fee would be appropriate, right? And that TAT has increased over years. But in any case, I mean, in our view, we've modeled out the financial implications of a $50 per person fee. And that would create a funding stream that would be consequential for Hawaii, meaning that we would actually be able to fund our natural resource management efforts at a scale commensurate to the challenges that we face with local pressures and our climate crisis. So, I mean, we could start with something smaller, but I think the key threshold is to what extent is the fee both palatable to the visitor sector? And in our view, something in the range of $50 is extremely feasible and would not deter any demand. Indeed, people were paying $150 to take a COVID test to come visit Hawaii prior to the vaccination card substituting for that. So there is a willingness to pay study already that has sort of been done. One thing to keep in mind is that if that fee is too low, then the cost of administering the system would be higher than its actual benefits. So there is a threshold. We think that threshold is near $20. But to put it in context for the committee, at $50 per person, giving the projections for visitor arrival increases in the islands and the rebuilding of tourism, that would produce something in the neighborhood of $400 million per year, which would be a huge game changer for our conservation and natural resource community and efforts. And it would protect the very asset that our visitors come to see and experience. So this is probably what I would recommend on the amount side.
So $50.
Yes.
Okay, but a range from say 30 to 50 would be a reasonable range to be looking at.
I think so. I'd be worried if it was something on the order of $5 or $10. I mean, David, what do we charge now for Diamond Head?
I think it's up to that now. I think it might be $10 a head. I think that's really low. I know I went in when I was in Palau a few years ago, it was $30, the exit green fee. And
it's 100 now, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and that's been some years now. I don't know what Palau's up to, but I think 50 is probably reasonable. And based on what people are paying to do other things in Hawaii, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. And surveys have shown, especially if you put this money back into the resources to which they're designed to protect and enhance, people don't have a problem with that. And I think 50 is probably a pretty reasonable fee to be looking at based on all the other costs that within the industry for, you know, doing commercial activities in outdoor spaces.
Yeah, that's right. I would just caution the committee, I don't know if this is a decision for this committee to make, but something very low on the order of $5, while it might be a good way to, as an entry level, it really would be inconsequential. So, and because it's a fee and not a tax, the fee has to be used for the purpose that it is applied for. So in this case, whatever the amount, it will, absolutely have to go back into the purpose for which it is assessed, which in this case is natural resource management. So I would say the bottom threshold is in the neighborhood of $20 to $25, Chair, but a $50 fee is, I think, based on our modeling, both consequential and will have no discernible impact on tourism.
All right, further questions, Rep. Caruso?
Yeah, this question is for DLNR. So I just want to bring up an idea that was mentioned in testimony, and that is this notion that these fees, the visitor fee writ large, not the site-specific fees, might be reconceptualized as a way to offset the impact of these visitors on climate change, the exacerbation and acceleration of climate change. And to think about how we can use those monies to engage in managed retreat or other climate change mitigation measures. And what I hear you saying, and I understand that how you are seeing this fee is a way to shore up your conservation efforts. But I'm wondering if there is, in the way you're thinking about it, a way to also engage in this other work, or if it's just solely dedicated to conservation efforts.
I think a lot of our thank you, David Smith again. A lot of our conservation efforts and climate change are complementary. So we have some, a lot of tree planting efforts that we've been scaling at a fairly low scale, just trying to do it in-house as can. And there's a lot of opportunity out there for going to scale with tree planting, and that is a big carbon sequestration program. So it'll have multiple benefits, whether it be wildlife habitat, reforestation, climate change, forest health. And so a lot of the conservation work we do also addresses that climate change piece. And so it'll have multi-sector benefits.
Okay. I think moving forward, maybe this is a conversation for further down the road, but I do think the crisis around managed retreat that we're seeing along our coastlines is something towards which these monies could logically be applied. So just thinking.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that's a good model to be looking at.
Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions, Rep. Martin?
Sorry, one more question. So usually the similar fees that I've experienced in other places, you basically collect them at the point of entry. It's in, at the airport. In this case, since it's kind of a voluntary self-payment, and people may or may not define themselves as visitors, depending on how close their ties are to the islands, how do we enforce it?
Jack, you want to take that one? You got a little more experience with a broader array of programs.
Sure, it's a great question. Well, in terms of and how you would issue a permit of this nature, you'd have to go online, and DLNR is doing this for so many different things, whether it's camping or hunting licenses, et cetera, that, the department would have a couple of years to figure out the right issuance system and how to tune that with other existing systems. Enforcement is an issue that goes way beyond this. And part of the reasons we think this would be transformative is that funding of this sort of scale would certainly enhance the enforcement capabilities of the department and its DoCare division in particular. So those are all, key parameters. I mean, right now you don't need to, you can, I think, go down to DLNR and get your hunting license. You can also get it online. So presumably we'd have a mechanism that would make for easy access for visitors. And then, we really think about this as a beach and trail pass sort of thing that, if you're going to go out hiking and have this great experience, you're going to need to have this in order to access and use those state resources and those natural areas. So it would be DoCare's, it would be within DoCare's domain to enforce that in those areas, which they already do anyway. They just have very little capacity to do it because they're spread so thin. So this would enhance that. Does that answer your question, Representative?
Not at all. So,
Okay.
so like if I'm going for a trail run, then somebody will stop me and ask to see either my local ID or some sort of permit that I have on a phone that I'm not carrying because I'm running. Or I mean, how does it literally, how does enforcement happen?
Well, I mean, yes, you would have to have this permit, just like if you were out hunting and you got stopped by an enforcement officer, or you were fishing commercially and you were stopped by an enforcement officer, you'd have to show your hunting license, your commercial fishing license. The advantage of a place like Diamond Head or Hanauma Bay is that, in order to gain entry, you have to pass through the permitting system, right? You have to go and pay for your pass, et cetera. So, but in this case, it's more like hunting or fishing where there isn't a pinch point, right? So yes, you would have to get one, and then you would have to have it, either digitally or on your person if you're out adventuring. And of course, the whole point of that is that it's an access pass and for those natural resource areas, and then that money would go back into those, including for enforcement. So yes, that's how it would work, and it would only be for non-Hawaii residents. We've spelled that out, or it's been spelled out rather in the bill very clearly about what that means. And we already do that for so many other things. You have a different fee rate for Hanauma Bay, for visitors versus residents. All of that has passed legal muster. I mean, we do this for UH tuition. So this is something that we do in a number of different institutions.
Yeah, and if I could jump in, we also are working closely with the U.S. Forest Service, and they have programs like this nationwide where they charge. I mean, you can't even park on the side of the road in a national forest without having a day pass. And so there's definitely systems in place. We have a shared stewardship agreement with the Forest Service, and one of the focus areas in that MOU is focusing on managed recreation and fee use and whatnot. And so there's definitely examples of how we could roll this out. And some of it's, you can have day use, you can have annual passes. I'm an advocate of having fees for residents as well, but this particular green fee, we're talking specifically for visitors. So there's a bunch of ways that other people manage it. I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel on that. And if we get the authority, then that's something that we can figure out the exact details. And, so you're concerned, oh, I don't have my phone on me or this or that, we can try to work out those kinds of details. And like Jack says, sometimes there's opportunities where you can actually have, with this type of funding, you could actually have a kiosk or a check-in station. It would enhance enforcement, and they certainly need as much help as they can get, because they are, just working on a shoestring. And if the probability of you being checked for something goes up, then the likelihood of people complying goes up significantly. But we could develop systems that are compatible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Great. Okay, we'll move on now to Senate Bill 3229 relating to geothermal royalties. This caps the amount of royalties that go to state and county, and then gives an additional remaining amount to University of Hawaii. And first up to testify, we have Russell Suji from DLNR.
Chair, good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Russell Tsuji for DLNR. We support geothermal development in general, Chair, as we noted, but we do have some concern and opposition to the current language in SD2. We don't think that was the intent of the committee, but what it ends up doing is ends up putting the DLNR in a situation of potentially not getting any revenue from the geothermal leasing, despite having the duties and responsibilities to regulate and actually manage the lease. An example in this case, under the current language, $2 million gross, let's say you just got $2 million gross in geothermal revenue, 600,000 will go to the county off the top. OHA will get 400,000. That's $1 million. The next $1 million will go to UH. And the regulators and lease management staff at DLNR will get nothing. And so we do have a suggested change. We'll ask that the committee consider that. Available here, myself and Ian Hirakawa is available here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Then we have University of Hawaii in support, but not registered to be present. The Hawaii State Energy Office.
Aloha Chair Lowen, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. The Hawaii State Energy Office stands on its testimony with comments. And mahalo.
Thank you. And then we have 3 additional individuals in support. Was there anyone else here who wanted to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay, then we will, oh, go ahead, Caruso.
This question is for DLNR.
Yes, Representative.
So we've spoken before about SLBF and ceded lands, and I'm assuming that all geothermal resources are extracted from ceded lands. Is that correct?
No.
No.
It is considered geothermal resource. In this particular instance, we have one geothermal lease, that's PGV. It's on
Right.
private land. However, the state reserved the resource, and the resource is the steam or the resource that is used to create the energy. In that case, that is ceded. The land is not ceded. But yet, notwithstanding that, as I said earlier on my example, OHA will get its share of its percentage. So like I said in my example, county in a $2 million gross situation, which is high for the one geothermal lease we have. But let's say we had 2 million, 600,000 under the current SD2 language will go to the county, 400 to OHA, 1 million to UH, and nothing to DLN. But yet we got to still manage and regulate the lease. And that's what we're saying. We have a suggestion that we think is fair. If you could take a look at that in our testimony. And we think it will achieve the objective of the bill where the county will get its share, OHA will get its share, the UH will get a portion, but after we get our lease management and regulatory side covered in our revenue side. Yeah.
Okay, so then are we treating the steam the same way that we treat land in that it's a public trust? The revenues from which should go to the 5 public interests?
And that's why OHA gets its.
That's why OHA gets, but I think like you're objecting to DLNR not getting additional monies or having a cap. And I think there's also a possible objection to be made about that distribution in that it doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution about those resources going to fund additional energy investment. So just noting that. Okay, thank you. I didn't understand that delineation. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? If not, we will move on.
This is Richard Ha. I'd like to testify.
Oh, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Richard Ha, President and co-founder of Sustainable Energy Hawaii. Our mission is to make life better for future generations. And we did submit a written testimony, but since then we've come out, there's been a major change. So this is what I'd like to talk about. And it's about the Castor Initiative. We need to fund $50 million to the Hawaii Groundwater and Geothermal Resource Center at UH Manoa. The Castor Initiative is named after a constellation of 6 stars. 6 partners will be demonstrating a ship using ammonia for fuel by 2025. They include, they're all 6 world-class operators. They include a world-class shipbuilder, Samsung, engine designer, shipping company, Port of Singapore, Yara, the largest ammonia producer in the world, and Lloyd's Register. Because of climate change, the idea is to decarbonize the world's ocean transportation. They're thinking, in addition to having that ship ready to go 2025, they hope to have 5% of the ships in the world ready to go by 2030, then the whole world fleet by 2050. Because we have geothermal, Hawaii can make ammonia. This is the game changer that Hawaii can participate in. Hawaii Island will sit over the hotspot for 1 to 2 million years. Since there is saturated
Richard, can you
rock.
keep it to the subject matter in the bill, and can you summarize for us, please? Thank you.
Well,
In support of the bill?
yeah, we support the bill. But I just wanted to say that this just came up. Nobody hardly knows about it, but it is a major game changer. So that's why I wanted to speak about that.
Okay,
So, you know, I wanted to add that Sustainable Energy Hawaii works very closely with Professor Nicole Lautze, the director of the Hawaii Groundwater and Geothermal Resource Center. Yeah, they have a drill rig and does this kind of work. And another thing is that the Sustainable Energy Hawaii just did 2 geothermal webinars that you know, it'd be worth people looking at.
Okay. Thank
That was
you.
about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. We'll move on. Next on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 3195 relating to Department of Hawaiian Homelands. This is appropriating money for geothermal exploration or identification on Hawaiian homelands. And sorry, first up to testify, we have DHHL.
Aloha and good morning, Chair Lowen, Vice Chair Martin, and other members of the committee. The department stands in strong support of this bill that appropriates money for investigation, exploration, and identification of geothermal lands on Hawaiian homelands. We have some promising sites up in the Humu'ula area, and in addition to the potential geothermal, the same puka that's going to be drilled could also provide much needed water for our homesteads that are on Hawaii Island. So thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Hawaii State Energy Office.
Aloha,
And-
Chair Lowen, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. The Hawaii State Energy Office stands on its testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you. And then we have additional testimony from Department of Budget and Finance with comments, and then Sustainable Energy Hawaii in support, and 2 additional individuals in support. Anyone else here who wishes to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? All right, if not, we will move on to Senate Bill 2612 relating to environmental sustainability. This establishes a reusable utensil pilot project in DOE schools on Molokai. And first up to testify, we have Department of Health in support.
Are we?
Okay, wait, backtracking. We went out of order on the agenda, so we're gonna go. Thank you, Vice Chair. We're going back to Senate Bill 2998 relating to recycling, and this is requiring Department of Health to implement risk-based audits of the deposit beverage container program. And this is the one that we have Department of Health first up in support. Go ahead, Michael.
Good
Sorry
morning,
about
Chair Lowen and Vice Chair Martin and members of the committee. This is Michael Burke with the Department of Health, and we submitted written testimony on SB 2998 in support, and we stand on our written testimony. And I'm here for questions, should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have the Hawaii County Department of Environmental Management in support, and American Beverage Association in support. Was there anyone else who signed up to testify that I missed? If not, members, any questions? All right, if not, now we are moving on to the Reusable Utensil Program for DOE schools in Molokai. And for that bill, first up, we have Department of Education. Randy Tanaka.
Hello, Chair Lowen, Vice Chair Martin. Good morning. On behalf of the Department of Education, Interim Superintendent Hayashi, we support this bill, have provided testimony, and willing and ready to answer questions. Aloha.
Thank you. Then we have additional testimony from Department of Budget and Finance, from Kuala Pu'u Public Conversion Charter School in support, and from from an individual, from Doug Perrine in support and Gerard Silva in opposition. Was there anyone else here to testify on this? If not, members, any questions? All right, if not, we will move on to SB 2290 relating to microbeads. First up, we have Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Greg Edwards with Department of Health. The department stands on our written testimony in support that will be available for any questions.
Thank you. And then we have Zero Waste Hawaii Island in support, Hawaii Island Reef Keepers Hui in support, Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition.
Aloha, Chair. Aloha, Chair
Go ahead.
Lowen, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition in strong support of this bill. Microbeads, little plastic microbeads are everywhere in our environment. They're used in cosmetics and other products. This bill is an attempt to shut off the faucet a little bit on the production of these. The problem is that these small microbeads are plastic and they go through most wastewater treatment plants in Hawaii. And so they go out in the ocean. They go up the food chain as they are consumed by small animals and larger animals and eventually into our food for those who eat seafood. So it's a problem, a large environmental problem, and it's exacerbated by the fact that they attract toxins as they go up as they go through the water. So they are actually harmful to the organisms. This bill is a good start to attacking this very large problem. It only applies to leave-on cosmetics because what's called rinse-off cosmetics are already covered under federal law from 2015. Key in this bill, it adds hygiene, skincare, and sun protection to the definition of the products. This is a good bill. I strongly urge the committee to pass it. I'm available for questions, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. And then we have Retail Merchants of Hawaii in opposition. All right, no one is present. Friends of Hanauma Bay in support, Center for Biological Diversity in support, and then we have Hawaii Food Industry Association. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. We'll stand on our testimony. We would really like to request that the AG take a look at this bill. The way we're reading it and some of the outside lawyers are reading it, we're unclear on what is actually attempting to be covered because these items were already federally banned in 2015. So just a thought on that. Thanks very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thanks. And then we have 5 additional individuals all in support. Was there anyone else here to testify? If not, members' questions? Rep. Tokioka.
Thank you. Department of Health. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi. So based on the last testimony and looking at what they wrote, they're talking about the Microbead Free Waters Act of 2015. Is that part of the testimony accurate, or their testimony accurate, that we already have something in place federally and we don't need this state in the state of Hawaii?
Well, with respect to the federal law, it's administered under FDA. It applies to the rinse-off products that I think Ted Boland addressed a moment ago in his testimony. This bill, as we understand it, with the changes in definitions in SD1, it appears like the state would be moving forward and addressing products that are more the leave-on products and not just the rinse-off. So our testimony would be, I believe our testimony is in line with not competing with FDA's, legislative, a ban on rinse-off products.
Okay, so Ted, were you able to read some of the testimony from the retail merchants and Lauren Zerbel's testimony? I just want to make sure that if I vote on this bill, that there's not something that supersedes this bill federally. And if this is a different product or different microbead, I'm not aware of that. So can you help me? Anybody?
Yes, Representative, I'd be happy to address that. Ted Boland again for Hawaii Reef and Ocean Coalition. I was a Deputy Attorney General representing the Department of Health for 15 years until I retired. This bill is a different set of products than are covered. It's very explicitly not covering the federal products from 2015 law. It's covering different products that are, as Greg was just saying, that are leave on rather than rinse off. And there's a clear delineation between those two. There is no problem that needs to be addressed legally.
Yeah. Okay, so can you give me an example? I'm sorry, I don't put stuff on my face. I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And when I think of a microbead, I think of something that you can see, but I think this is something that you can barely see.
Yeah, barely see. They're less than 5 millimeters, which is very small, not invisible, but very small. And they're in the product. You don't really see them in the products, but they're there. And lots of personal care products, cosmetics, makeup, beauty enhancing things use microbeads and are generally rinse off, especially the exfoliant types. But the products that are leave on are not covered under the federal act, and it's entirely appropriate that the state of Hawaii move forward with this environmental protection measure to prohibit the manufacture and sale of those leave on products.
Okay, so in the testimony, Ted, of the retail merchants, so their question is, what exactly are the products that the bill refers to? So I think they're trying to scrub it so that they can understand what is allowed and what is not allowed. So can you help with that part?
Sure, I can try. Although I would have to say they have more expertise in this because they make and sell the products. It is quite easy to indicate which products are rinse off because that's what the federal act covered. So you can look to the federal act and see what it covered, and what is not covered in the federal act is something that the state of Hawaii can still cover. And that is, again, the leave on products, including hygiene, skincare, and sun protection products, which you don't rinse off typically. Although you do rinse them off when you take a shower, and they do go down the drain and out the sewer treatment plant and out into the ocean. As I indicated, that's a problem. So the leave-on products are what this bill is addressing. I don't think there's any legal, as I said, I don't think there's any legal problem that needs to be addressed. This is a pretty clear delineation and a good way for the state of Hawaii to move forward.
Okay.
Got it.
Thank you for your question, Representative.
Just quick follow-up, I guess, Department of Health. I just did a quick Google search and it seems to indicate like makeup in particular has microplastics in it, mascara, lipstick, foundation, and face powders. Is that your understanding of what would be these products that are not covered by the rinse-off law?
Correct. Ultimately, it all, as Ted just mentioned, ultimately it's all going to come off your body at some point and could end up in the environment, the wastewater stream, marine
Sure, but I
environment.
think what Representative Tokioka was asking is, what are these products? Where are these? We kind of are familiar with the idea that there might be microplastics in some kind of face scrub or something, but what are these products? And it looks
hand
like
sanitizers could be an example that I've read of microbeads that again it stays on your hands. Again, I guess certain cosmetic products. I don't use them myself, but my understanding is they can be in cosmetics that are intended to stay, on your skin and not just be used to wash and cleanse.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, go ahead, Rep. Matsumoto.
Does anybody know why they use microbeads for leave-on products? Just out of curiosity.
I think if I may address that for High Rock, the answer is cost. It's a very cheap way to fill out products because plastic is inexpensive. So it's seen as being an inexpensive way to make the product. And in some, in the rinse-off products, it's used as an exfoliant. But in these products, it's simply an enhancer, essentially, of the product manufacturer.
Further questions? Okay, thanks. If not, We are on to Senate Bill 2662 relating to construction waste. And first up, we have State Procurement Office.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bonnie Kahakui for the State Procurement Office. We stand on our written testimony, providing comments and available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Kauai Women's Caucus in support. We have Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. Climate Protectors Hawaii in support, but not signed up to testify in person. Mokulua HPB in support. Hawaii Gas.
Hey, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Julie Yunker with Hawaii Gas in support of SB 2662 SD2. We'll stand on our written testimony.
Thank you. Reuse Hawaii. In support. Is anyone
Aloha.
from, oh, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thanks so much. I just wanted to share, we're excited about this bill because the majority of our waste stream comes from construction and demolition debris. About 30% of the waste that we see going into the landfills. And there's a great opportunity to not only divert this material, but also create an awesome community, affordable community resource from it. And create a new industry around deconstruction of buildings as an alternative to conventional demolition. And we're seeing this in other cities like Portland, Oregon, has some emphasis on deconstruction, and they're keeping most buildings out of the landfill. So it's really incredible. I also just wanted to, I saw that we're talking about that it's an option to divert waste for gasification and the production of fuel, which is also great. We had some issue with that in previous years with the landfill putting wood waste into a separate landfill cell without an end user identified. And so the recommendation would be to make sure there's an end user specifically identified up front, and that there's a time limit on when wood waste should be used. Because I think at this point it's been in that landfill cell for like over 5 years. So I think the recommendation is like within a year it should be used for the gasification. So hope that helps. I'll be here for questions and really appreciate the support. Mahalo.
Thank you. And next up, General Contractors Association in opposition, and then BIA Hawaii.
Aloha, Chair, members of the committee. Stephanie Sakamoto on behalf of BIA Hawaii will stand on our testimony in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have one individual in support. Is there anyone else I missed who wanted to testify on this? If not, members, any questions?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Kirsten Baumgart Turner, Deputy Energy Officer for the Hawaii State Energy Office. We just wanted to note our late testimony in offering comments in support of the intent of this bill and the targets for diversion of waste, of the construction and demolition waste, and its potential for energy use, as Quinn so ably pointed out. So mahalo for allowing us to testify.
Thank you. All right, if no further testimony, members, questions, Rep. Crusoe.
Quick question for Quinn Vidum from Reuse.
Sure.
Hello, Quinn.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm wondering, reading this bill, it seems to give preference to contractors, whether they're involved in deconstruction or construction, if they have been involved in recycling and reusing. And I'm wondering, I know that's what your company does, and do you have any competitors?
Yeah, that's our focus. We have our deconstruction program where we offer alternatives to demolition. And actually anyone can salvage material for reuse. And so I think the spirit of this bill is to put an emphasis on it so that folks just do more recovery of reusable material. And it could be for recycling, like in the case of scrap metal, because we see a lot of commingling of scrap metal. It's just easily recycled. Part of the problem is the tipping fees are so low here, so it's just time is money, so they just commingle and landfill everything. Same thing with concrete. But then also the reuse of cabinets, doors and windows, plumbing, electrical fixtures, all this kind of stuff can be donated to local affordable housing organizations like Habitat for Humanity. There's Non-Enculi Housing Corporation that empowers families to do their own home improvement projects. And then there's Reuse Hawaii, which we just take in material so that people have an avenue so they don't have to throw it out. So yeah.
Basically, what I hear you saying and what the other testimony has said as well is that for most other contractors, that process occurs at the site of the landfill. So the landfills are doing that kind of sorting, and there isn't that much recycling that those contractors are engaged in. And so if you were to offer a bid on a project, you might be the only offer or the only priority offer. Is that correct?
Oh, no. I think what we're looking at doing, the industry would, because it's only 20%, it's pretty easy to divert that amount of waste, no matter who you are. It's really not that hard. And so I think part of it too is, the landfills announced they'd be closing in the next 5 years, both Waimanalo Gulch and PVT. So there's just a sense of urgency for the city in particular, city of Honolulu in particular, but also other counties are concerned about it too. Like on Hawaii Island, we're shipping all the waste from Hilo to the west side. It's just really inefficient. So the more we can do to keep material out of the landfill and make resources out of it, the better. And, it might take some time, but what we saw in Portland, Oregon, is now there's new industries popping up, people that are learning how to do and material recovery. And in fact, the Reuse Hawaii over there, it's called the Rebuilding Center. They don't even do the deconstruction anymore because then the private industry is handling it. So honestly, that would be a great place to be. Welcome.
Any further questions? Okay.
I see the testimony, but I didn't see the procurement office. Is anybody on the Zoom from the procurement office? No.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. So in your testimony, you say that the bill is not necessary for the state and the counties because we already have something.
Okay, so our testimony is specifically on 103D, in which we do have language through our admin rules that allows or gives preferences to recycled materials, which at a minimum is 5%.
Okay, so for the state and the city and the counties, we don't need this language or this bill.
Not for the recycled portion, no, we do not need this.
Yes, you're right. And what about the rest of the bill? Can you speak in your microphone, please? Yeah.
So, the rest of the bill is not speaking to the procurement code, but we did make mention that there is language in the other statutes that talk about recycled materials. So our concern is only about the solicitation for recycled, products.
Construction waste.
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. Thank you very much. I have a question for Quinn. Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Quinn, are you there?
Yeah. Hi.
Okay, so you're a contractor?
So Reuse Hawaii is a nonprofit organization dedicated to waste reduction. And we have a deconstruction program where we offer alternatives to demolition and deconstructing buildings in the opposite order that they're built, so the majority of material can be recovered for reuse.
Okay. So why haven't businesses been successful doing construction waste and getting recycled products back from that? I mean, obviously, I'm thinking you're successful. I don't know what your company exactly does, but I'm thinking you're successful since you're doing it. but why can't other companies just do that without us doing a bill? Because we want to make sure, and I'm a big recycler. You go in my office and you go in my house, I recycle everything. Because I don't want I live on Kauai, I don't want my kids to have to deal with trash, but it doesn't seem like everybody else is on the same page. But how can we incentivize companies like yours without putting the burden on homeowners that the cost of construction is so high right now? And that's what BIA is talking about in their testimony, is that the cost for construction for a local person to build a house, if this bill passes, is going to go up exponentially. So is there a way that we can incentivize companies like you, whether it's tax credits, whether it's other things that companies like you can do to take that waste out of the waste stream?
Sure, yeah. So we talk a lot about the tax deductibility of salvage material if it is donated to a nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity, Non-Akuli Housing, or Hawaii. Or, you know, it could also be like Hope Services on the Big Island, you know, if they need the stuff at the given time. So that's a huge incentive for folks. And oftentimes folks just aren't aware that if they donate, say, their kitchen cabinet set, you know, if they have a contractor come in and do their kitchen cabinets, if they donate that, they're actually saving money on the demolition. So with remodel related work, it's a fantastic way to actually save costs. So there's a little bit of a misconception there. Now with whole buildings, if folks don't have an appetite for a tax deduction, like in the case of some businesses just can't leverage that, then the cost of deconstruction can be higher. So it just depends on the situation. To your question, like why is the industry not already doing it? It's a really good question. You know, I think it kind of comes down to like right now it's sort of an altruistic thing, and then the tax deduction coming into play as well. And this bill would just help kind of bring folks along to do the right thing for what we need to do from a waste reduction standpoint in the state. And, you know, 20% is really like in previous years, it was talked about like 50%, right? So this is just a, you know, small kind effort to put an emphasis on it, get the industry used to diverting material. And I think everyone's going to be thrilled by it, honestly. And contractors that we work with, there's a whole slew of them can speak to the benefits of it. So thank you. Appreciate the question.
Okay. We will move on to Senate Bill 3325 relating to carbon sequestration incentives. And first up to testify, we have DLNR in support.
Yeah, hi, David Smith, Administrator, Division of Forestry and Wildlife. We'll stand on our written testimony and support, and we offer comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Agriculture with comments. Department of Budget and Finance with comments. Office of Planning and Sustainable Development with comments. And then Hawaii Cattlemen's Council in support. Zero Waste Hawaii Island in support. Nature Conservancy Hawaii in support. Climate Protectors Hawaii in support. 350 Hawaii in support. Hawaii Farm Bureau in support. Energy and Climate Action Committee of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party in support. HAPA in support. Kauai Women's Caucus in support. And then we have 16 individuals who submitted testimony in support and 1 in opposition. Was there anyone else here who wanted to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay, we will move on in that case to Senate Bill 2618 relating to the Department of the Attorney General. First up to testify, we have the Attorney General in opposition.
Yes, and good morning, Chair Lowen, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. My name is David Williams. I'm a Deputy Attorney General. We are opposing this bill, and as detailed more in our written testimony, we're opposing it for the following reasons. First, Maui Police, they already have a full-time presence on Molokai at the police station. Also, DLNR bill care officers, they also have a full-time presence already on Molokai. They also field calls from an existing hotline. Further, there's very few AG investigation cases on Molokai in the last 8 years. Also, the cost of setting up a permanent AG investigation facility on Molokai is a concern where there's already sister law enforcement agencies there who can respond quickly. Sure, evidence is needed. And finally, there is a bill, Senate Bill 3139, and its companion bill, HB 2171. That are both still making its way through the ledge this session. They're seeking to establish Department of Law Enforcement, which would include an investigated presence in all of the counties, and that might be able to address the issues raised in this bill. So for these reasons, as detailed more in our written testimony, we are respectfully opposing this bill, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Next up, we have Department of Budget and Finance with comments and one individual in opposition. Is there anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, questions? All right, we will move on to the last bill on our agenda. This is a special purpose revenue bond relating to assist Hawaiian Legacy Reforestation Initiative. And first up, we have Office of Planning and Sustainable Development with comments. I don't think anyone's present. Department of Budget and Finance with comments. And then we have 350 Hawaii in opposition and all of the following in support. Hawaiian Legacy Reforestation Initiative, Wilkinson Koa Furniture, Ponce, Alohilani Resort, Embassy Suites, Waikiki, Beach Walk, Kahala Hotel and Resort, Doug Perrine, Betsy Mailer, Francis Wong, the Hawaii Convention Center, John Kawamoto, Janice Mills, Terry Orton, Earl Regidor, Jason Ho'opai, and Janet Pappas, all in support. Was there anyone here to testify on this measure in person? All right, there's nobody to ask questions of. So we will recess for decision making. All right, we are back for decision-making on the 9 a.m. agenda, Committee on Energy and Environmental Protection, March 15th, room 325. First up, we have SB 3192. This is the visitor impact fee. So on page 5, line 2, we're just going to clarify that the valid school identification card should be from a school in Hawaii. And on page 6, line 14, we'll specify that the BLNR chair increases will be done by rule. And technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And then maybe we'll just also make a note in the committee report, since this amount that we're considering has never been disclosed, that the recommended amount seems to be somewhere between $25 to $50. So no less than 25 sounds like a starting point. So yeah, recommendation to pass with those amendments. Members, any discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The chair recommends passing SB 3192 with amendments. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Hashem. Aye. Representative Matsuyoshi is excused for this entire hearing. Representative Peruso.
Aye.
Representative Todd.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And next up, we have Senate Bill 3229 relating to geothermal royalties. This already has a defective date of July 1st, 2050. So we will move this forward for further consideration as is. So members, any discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 3229, SD2 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any noes or reservations? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
All right, and next SB 3195 relating to Department of Hawaiian Homelands. This is for geothermal exploration, investigation, and identification on DHHL lands. Already has a defective date, so the recommendation is also to move this forward as is. Members, any discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 3195 SD2 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations or noes? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And next we have SB 2998. This is the risk-based audits for deposit beverage container program. All testimony in support of this. So we're going to move this forward as is. Any discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 2998 SD1 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any noes or reservations? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And then Senate Bill 2616, the Molokai Reusable Utensil Pilot Project. This is a laudable idea we want to keep discussing, so we will move this forward as is. It already has a defective date. Any discussion, members? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 2612 SD2 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Members, are there any noes or reservations? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And next up, Senate Bill 2290 relating to microbeads. Apparently there are microplastics in makeup and other products. This already has a defective date. And so the recommendation is to move this forward as is. Members, any discussion?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna with reservations. Not clear whether we need this or the federal guidelines already mandated. So,
Got it. Thank you.
I don't want to make sure my friend will take it. Products.
I'm also going to go with reservations. I know it says the manufacturer of personal care products. I don't know how much manufacturing of personal care products in Hawaii, but the definition of a plastic microbead in this bill is any plastic particle less than 5 millimeters in size, and that seems like it's going to be every single product. So 2022 seems pretty quick turnaround. For that, I'll be.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 2290 SD1 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Tokioka and Representative Matsumoto vote with reservations. Are there any additional noes or reservations? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And next up, we have Senate Bill 2662 relating to construction waste. Again, this does have a defective date, so we will move it forward as is for further discussion. Members, any discussion? Carissa.
I'm a little bit concerned about the use of construction waste for energy purposes through gasification, so I'm going to be WR on this.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, if not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 2662 SD2 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Peruso votes with reservations. Are there any additional noes or reservations? Representative Tokioka votes no. Representative Matsumoto votes with reservations. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And then for Senate Bill 3225, this is the carbon sequestration initiatives. We're actually going to defer decision-making to Thursday at the end of our, is it a 9 a.m. agenda? The end of our 9 a.m. agenda. This has gone through several iterations with different agencies managing it, and we just want to have some discussion with the involved parties and figure out what is the preferable path forward before we decide all the changes to this bill. Senate Bill 2618, this is establishing an environmental hotline on Molokai, just given that there was no testimony in support and grave concerns from the Attorney General, we're going to defer this bill. And finally, we have Senate Bill 2070. This is a special purpose revenue bond for the Hawaiian Legacy Reforestation Initiative. Already has a defective date, so we will. I will recommend moving this forward as is. Members, any discussion? If not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 2070 SD1 as is. Chair, Vice Chair votes aye. Are there any noes or reservations? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Great, thank you, and we are adjourned.
Yeah, I think we're,
how to best
we
structure.
tried to get as much, we got the triples up this week or
Okay,
tomorrow.
the mics are on. We're starting.
Probably gonna come on later on.
All right. Are we on? Okay, so we are here, Committee on Energy and Environmental Protection and Committee on Economic Development. It is Tuesday, March 15th, 10:30 a.m. We are in the conference room 325. And we have one bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 2478, relating to the renewable fuel tax credits. And first up, we have testimony from Budget and Finance with comments from Department of Taxation.
Yes, Chair. This is Jonathan White on behalf of the Department of Tax. The department has provided some comments on the bill. We'll stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii State Energy Office. In support.
Apologies, I thought I was speaking. This is Kirsten Baumgart Turner, Hawaii State Energy Office Deputy. We appreciate Chair Lowen and Vice Chair Quinn, Chairs Martin and Holt, the opportunity to testify. We stand on our testimony in support. Mahalo.
And then we have Brandon Wolf, ILWU, in support. Brandon, are you present? All right, then we have the Pet Food Institute in opposition. And then Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair Lowen. Members of the committee, Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have submitted written comments. As a technical matter, I wanted to emphasize that there are some issues with the ability to convert the non-refundable credit to a refundable one. In addition to what the Department of Taxation has testified, we note that the probable users of the credit may be well-to-do individuals from other states who don't have so much income in Hawaii, and under the conversion option is currently drafted, they would be allowed to convert to refundability with no cost. And I'm not sure that's what what you folks intended, so we wanted to flag that. We'd be happy to answer any questions, and we'll be here for the duration of the hearing.
Thank you. And then we have Hawaii Farm Bureau in support, PAR Hawaii in support, 350 Hawaii in opposition, Pacific Biodiesel Technologies, Bob King in support. Bob, are you present?
Yes, I am. And thank you for having this hearing today. I do support this tax credit. We've been one of the few that has been able to use it before. I would like a couple of the issues that were in another bill, the HB 1809, specifically that it's a 10-year instead of 5. We just need a little more time to put this kind of infrastructure together. We support having a refundable credit, but if not, the non-refundable works. As a matter of record, I think we probably only generate about 25 or 30% of the credits that we're allowed are actually used because people don't have tax liability. Even a lot of the people that are from Hawaii just don't have the tax liability to use those credits. But we do appreciate the having the access to the credits. It's a good thing for investors to look forward to if they can use it. And other than that, I'm available for questions if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Hawaii Gas, Julie Yunker in support.
Yep. Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I would iterate what Bob said, that we are able with our Honolulu project to take advantage of these production tax credits. We would also support the refundable clause as well as the extension for 10 years. We also offer and respectfully ask the committee to address the data privacy concerns laid out in our testimony. The information to be collected and compiled by HSEO is highly confidential and should not be made for public disclosure. Additionally, any critical infrastructure information, including details that are specific, such as location and amount of renewable fuel production, be held confidential as a matter of national security and Hawaii's energy security. Having that information publicly available could make Hawaii vulnerable to attacks on its critical energy infrastructure. We appreciate the benefits this legislation will bring to allow Hawaii Gas to provide reliable, affordable energy to the people and businesses of Hawaii while sustaining our reliability and resiliency, so critical to Hawaii's infrastructure, especially in times of natural disasters. We request the committee to include these amendments and pass SB 2478 SD2 with amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Hawaii Clean Power Alliance in support. Hawaii Forest Stewards with comments. Democratic Caucus of the Environmental Party, Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party in opposition. And then we have a number of other written testimonies submitted. So I'm just going to read the ones who signed up to testify on Zoom, and then I'll see if there's anyone in the audience. So first up, we have Susan Ignacio with ILWU. Susan, are you present? If not, next we have Anthony Padilla. And then finally, we have Climate Protectors Hawaii, Ted Boland.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. Ted Boland for the Climate Protectors Hawaii. We are in strong support of renewable tax credits. We think that's what Hawaii needs. That's a great aspect of the bill. We filed comments, and I know other commenters, including, for example, the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party, of which I'm part, filed an opposition. But the clarification we want to make here is that not all renewables are good for the environment. It sounds great to be renewable, but some renewables are actually worse than fossil fuels when it comes to climate change. It's important to consider the greenhouse gas life cycle analysis. And burning wood, for example, to generate electricity or to produce hydrogen is actually bad for the environment and should not be incentivized by the state with tax credits. So the Climate Protectors would strongly urge the committee to amend the bill to strip out the tax credits for wood burning. And I put in my written testimony the places where that should occur. Page 11, lines 1 to 3, strike including but not limited to, and substitute but excluding trees, logs, wood chips, wood pellets, and wood bark. On page 12, line 2, it should read hydrogen if it is produced from non-emitting carbon sources, not fossil fuels or wood. And on page 12, lines 6 to 7, delete the words or logs, wood chips, wood pellets, or wood bark. I think it's very important that the state of Hawaii get this right and that we not incentivize with tax credits production that is very harmful to the environment. Wood is really worse than coal when you consider the lost sequestration value of killing trees and then burning them to put carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. When you put those two factors together, it's actually a double whammy against the environment and in favor of climate warming. We face a climate emergency in Hawaii. We've got to take this seriously now, not wait till 2045, and eliminate incentives for fossil fuel burning in the tax credits. So please make those amendments to the bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. There was no one else who signed up to testify on Zoom. Is there anyone here in the audience who wants to testify on this measure? Anyone else that we missed? All right, if not members, any questions? Any EEP members questions? If not, Chair Quinlan.
Yeah, for DOTA.
Yes.
You know, this
refundable portion in this bill, do we have other refundable tax credits that are given to non-Hawaii residents or non-Hawaii corporations?
Well, I guess any refundable credit could probably be claimed by, valuably claimed by a non-Hawaii corporation. For example, like the research credit, I think is refundable, and the film credit as well. So a lot of those corporations, they don't have a Hawaii tax liability to cover with the non-refundable credit, which is why it's important to have that refundability in those particular credits. I think this one, having that refundability option is sort of in a way toward that happening as well with this credit.
So do you guys have any numbers on what this might be in terms of this tax credit?
We don't have like a revenue estimate for this credit. The original version of this credit, the original bill stated it had the same $3 million aggregate cap and the same $3 million per taxpayer cap as the previously expired credit. And then I looked at our annual report to get ready for the hearing, and it seemed like in, I think 2019 or in 2018, which is the annual report that came out 2019, had the latest data, and it was several $100,000, between $300,000 and $400,000 of credits claimed. So I don't think it was getting close to that aggregate cap, and it was 20 total taxpayers. So I would imagine that it would be somewhere in that ballpark, but we don't have a number specifically yet. And the refundability option will make that higher, almost certainly.
Right, so the previous tax credit was not refundable, correct?
That's correct.
Right, so this refundability might create higher demand for this tax credit?
I think so. I think that we've seen this with other tax credits, like where they're trying to make the credit itself more attractive, which will increase investment. Like the low-income housing tax credit's another one, film credit as well. So that basically, people outside the state that don't have any Hawaii tax liability to cover can essentially be a valuable investor in the project and get some value from the credit because they can get a refund check. So I think that it will increase the demand for the credit, which means increased investment to be fair, which means increased investment into these projects.
Okay. I guess for the Hawaii Energy, I had a question. Chair, if I can.
Yes, this is Kirsten.
Yeah, I had a question about, there's on page 5 at the bottom, it says upon reaching a dollar value in the aggregate, the Hawaii State Energy Office shall immediately discontinue issuing certificates and notify the Department of Taxation. And it continues on the next page. No instance shall the total dollar amount of certificates issued exceed X dollars per calendar year. Why is that important?
As I understood, and again, I haven't been part of the history of this bill. As you know, the State Energy Office has managed this tax credit, is that there was a limit to the amount that was available to provide for the credit. But I would have to check with my subject matter experts who managed this credit. And perhaps Bob knows the history a little bit better than me.
Well, my reading of the language in paragraph F on page 5 is that we would establish a dollar ceiling and that all the eligible taxpayers for the year would then be prorated that ceiling amount. But I didn't understand why we would stop issuing certificates for potentially new developers that may want to come to Hawaii. I mean, except that it might reduce the amount of tax credit that existing companies may have, or may be able to share it. So, this to me is a bill to incentivize investments in Hawaii. And if demand exceeds our tax credit limit, wouldn't it make more sense to adjust the tax credit limit to be able to accept more companies or more entities doing renewable fuel development?
Conceptually, yes, but I would defer to DOE tax for the determination of what the tax department can bear in terms of the amount.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have two questions, one in the area of taxes and then one in the area of the choice of renewable energy. So for the first one, if I can ask Department of Taxation.
Yes.
So I know we're kind of blowing past BNF's testimony in numerous committees about the impact of the use of ARP funds, either directly or indirectly, and whether we need to offset. But does this tax credit program in any way implicate this requirement? Do we know if any of this program would have indirectly or directly used ARPA funds to implicate whether or not we have to do an offset?
Sorry, I don't know. We haven't been studying the ARPA issue. I don't think we've been leaving that to BNF.
Maybe someone in the state energy office knows.
To my knowledge, no, we have not used ARPA funds for this.
Okay.
However, as I said in the past, I don't know when, for example, under the Obama administration, whether that was used at all. But at least for the current administration, no, not in my awareness.
Okay, I would just want to make sure that we don't lose track of that, because if we do have to do an offset at some point, and I don't know, if state energy office is using funds, I just don't know what the implications are. I hope someone's watching this, because increases in our electricity at this point might cause a lot of stress to working families, I think, and anything that might impact that people are very concerned about costs and inflation.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate you raising that point, because this is something that the Hawaii State Energy Office is paying close attention to, and we're working with many of our partners on a lot of the issues, and particularly how to help the low moderate income community be able to cope with increased energy costs.
Thank you very much. My next question is for, I guess, the issue of choice of renewable fuels. Mr. Boland, I guess you're up since you spoke to that issue.
Yes. What's your
So
question?
one of my concerns is when we're picking these things, I understand you call wood burning a pariah fuel as if it's a person, and I get it. But what concerns me is as we have conversations about what we pick as renewable, we recently heard conversations on the floor that waste to energy might be something that we don't want to do. I guess, if we have programs and projects where we're doing things like building out wood, which we can burn, or we're looking at burning albizia, how is that not something that might be potentially positive? And so why should we limit to the degree that you're saying we should limit the choice of renewable fuels?
Thank you for that question. I'm not proposing, Climate Protectors is not proposing to address trash burning, but if your broader point is how do we pick which renewables get tax credits, I think there is a clear case to be made that wood is not the right place. Even albizia, which granted is a nuisance tree, and when it's standing it can be dangerous to people around it when it falls because it's so brittle. But it is more useful as a sequestration vehicle if you don't burn it, but cut it up and use it for mulch or whatever on the ground. At that point, you're still getting sequestration value, not in going forward, but at least you're not throwing it up in the atmosphere. So any burning of trees is bad for the climate and really shouldn't be incentivized by the state. In terms of trash, there's a lot of issues around that, but that's not part of this bill, and I'm not addressing that today.
No, thank you. But I think, when we look at these types of things, I think it's important that sometimes I think the micromanaging of these things might be not positive. But thank you for your comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your question. And I would just say that micromanaging is not bad, but when you're talking about wood, it's not micromanaging. This is a big issue. Thank you.
I think Brett Russo had a question.
It's for the Energy Office. So we've heard testimony, as the majority policy leader just mentioned, in opposition to the inclusion of tax credits for burning wood biomass and hydrogen produced from wood. And I also noted in ILWU's testimony that they said, quote, current technology being implemented in biofuel energy production reduces emissions to negligible levels. Can you talk about that assertion? And this question is for the Energy Office.
Well, not being a technical subject matter expert, I can only give you my overall opinion and my experience in the industry for many years. But I would defer to give you some more exact scientific data to our subject matter experts. And also, I think we have Mr. King on the line and he can give some to this. But I just want to point out that burning wood waste is not the only alternative. And of course, when you burn anything, you are emitting carbon dioxide, and that also burning for fuel is not the most energy efficient way to produce energy. You lose a lot in the process. And there are technologies for conversion pathways of wood waste, for example, or any kind of cellulosic biomaterial. One being thermochemical, which is gasification or liquefaction or pyrolysis, and the other being biochemical, which would be anaerobic digestion or fermentation or photobiological hydrogen production, for example. So these conversion techniques all have different conversion rates of BTUs to usable electricity and or fuel that have differing efficiencies, but they're all much more efficient than directly burning wood. And they also do not have the same high level of greenhouse gas emissions. But again, I'm not a scientist, so I defer, and I'd be happy to get back to you with an answer to that question from some of our experts.
I would very much appreciate that.
I have a couple questions, I guess, before we go back, unless any other EEP members have questions.
I have a follow-up.
Okay, can I ask my question first? For, I would say Energy Office, but Kirsten, I know you may not know the answer, so maybe for Bob King. Just to clarify the history, so this bill is reinstating a tax credit that used to exist and sunsetted. And the initial incarnation of this tax credit, was really focused on what we traditionally think of as biofuels. And then there were amendments made in a subsequent year that added actually some of the language that's currently under contention that specifically calls out trees, et cetera. Is that correct? Like, is that your recollection of that as well, Bob?
I think that's true. It's been a while, so there wasn't much else in there around the state back in those days, the original days.
Well, it was 2016 or 17, I think, not so long ago.
Yeah, because I'm getting old. So yeah, I think that's true. They keep adding other things as other projects may become relevant or not.
Okay. Well, there was only one thing. If this is your recollection, essentially the language was similar to this, the new addition in that subsequent year being the specific language discussing logs, wood chips, wood pellets. And then the part that I think is most, well, I guess I'll say this, the tax credit has a couple definitions in it, right? It defines what are renewable feedstock. So these would be the, kind of raw materials that went into producing the renewable fuel. That is the product of it, that is what this tax credit is being offered for, the production of renewable fuels. And, traditionally, would you agree that traditionally a renewable fuel is a product that is like a liquid or a gas? Is that kind of what you would think of as a renewable fuel under this
Right.
tax credit?
Right.
So it was interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's different than there's a myriad of tax credits for solar or wind or even batteries. This is, liquid biofuels are a little different in how they're made, how they're calculated. So we didn't qualify for any of those solar or wind credits, and this is the one place that we, maybe the only place that we had an incentive for liquid biofuels, and then now gaseous biofuels has been added in there.
Right. And then maybe, and also Energy Office, if you have any input on this. I just think it's interesting in the subsequent amendments that were made to this tax credit, which seemed geared to a specific project, is where we added to the definition, and not the definition of feedstock, but the definition of fuel. So subsection G under this definition of fuel, it defines logs, woods, wood chips, wood pellets, or wood bark as a fuel, as a product that would come from this feedstock. So it's essentially, is that intuitively what you would think of as a renewable fuel under your understanding of it? And Energy Office, also feel free to comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob, and then I'll be happy to chime in.
Yeah, I'll just put my view on the wood fuel. I think wood would have been a great fuel if we started 30 years ago, and we're already on to the next generation of sequestration with renewable forests. But we're not there. Where we're at today is that we need to reduce emissions today. So
the question I have though is this: is that you're talking about wood being burned to produce energy, right? In that case, wood is the feedstock, the energy is the product. But we're talking about a renewable fuel tax credit that we're thinking of as the end product being a liquid or a gas. So it's very unusual in my mind that the end product would be a log.
Yeah, that is an interesting point, Replon, that would be a diversion from where we had renewable fuel in the past, compared to say biodiesel or ethanol or other fungible fuels, because wood chips are not fungible. You can't just use them anywhere. You've got to be very specific about what are you going to do with it. Can't put it in a car.
And then for Energy Office, I guess the question I have too, there is another bill moving that looks at tax credits for firm renewable utility scale generation. So maybe that's a better vehicle to address
the renewable.
Question.
Yeah.
Not on this agenda.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, Representative. I agree. However, I do just want to point out again that there are conversion technologies that do allow for fungible fuel, and they're at various stages of development and various stages of prices. But I believe that when this fuel tax was put in place, we were looking at a couple of exactly what you say, traditional fuel conversion. And so that's where that language probably came from.
Yeah, I think we can talk offline too. I think you're talking about the feedstock piece of it.
Yes.
What can be a feedstock? I'm talking about what can be the product of the processing. So anyway, I think Rep. Onishi had further questions.
No, I have a similar question.
Okay. Any further questions, members?
I will. So based on that line of questioning, would it be better to put that wood log portion in the feedstock section of the definitions to recognize that the conversion and the conversion technologies and science has now evolved so that logs, wood chips, wood pellets, or wood bark should be in the definition under renewable feedstocks. And this is a question for the State Energy Office.
The State Energy Office doesn't feel that we should be ruling anything out because of the advancement of technologies. So it's important to look at the whole array of what's possible. But again, I'm not the scientific expert, and I would like to be able to get back to you with a definitive answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? All right, if not, we would recess for decision making.
Thank you.
Energy and Environmental Protection and Committee on Economic Development. For decision-making on SB 2478, we're going to make a number of changes, essentially taking the House position from HB 1809 HD3 with some changes to that. And I'm also outlined some of the things that were in that bill. So we're going to go ahead and fill in the blank amounts. It would be 20 cents per 76,000 BTU. We'll change that threshold from 2.5 billion BTU to the 15 billion BTU, which was the House version and also what existed in the previous tax credit. And the aggregate cap, we would put at 3 million. We'll change this back to being non-refundable. This will also add back the requirement we added in the House that for the tax credit, the fuels being produced must show they have life cycle greenhouse gas emissions substantially below those of fossil fuels, with Hawaii Energy being the certifying entity. We'll add some language to clarify the information that taxpayers must provide and timeline for doing so, as well as language establishing a timeline for the Energy Office to process and certify claims in a timely way. Under the definition of renewable feedstock, we'll take that back to just saying biomass and not specifying other organic material, including logs, wood chips, wood pellets, etc. Not saying that they're being excluded, it's just that is biomass. We don't need to be more specific. We'll also take out the words that can be used to generate energy on page 11, line 15. And under the definition of renewable fuels, we'll delete subsection G on page 12, line 7. Page 12, line 10, this will apply to taxable years after December 31st, 2022. And then we will also look at Hawaii Gas's suggestions to address their concerns about data privacy from their testimony. And then additional technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. There is a defective date already. Any discussion, members? All right, if not, Vice Chair, please take the vote.
The chair recommends passing SB 2478 SD2 with amendments. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Matayoshi is excused. Representative Hashem.
Aye.
Representative Peruso.
Aye.
Representative Todd.
Aye.
Representative Tokioka.
Reservation.
Representative Matsumoto. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Committee on Economic Development, same recommendation. Members, questions, comments, concerns. Kobayashi.
Thank you, Chair. So I've talked about this issue before. Obviously, I'm speaking in opposition. So obviously, we have a large need to consider renewable fuel sources. I just, as always, feel that we talk about this in a vacuum. We have the luxury in the wealthier countries to look at just the effect on carbon emissions and climate change of our fuel generation. For a lot of the rest of the world, particularly the subsistence economies in the Southern Hemisphere, a lot of the discussion focuses on the price of food that is being driven up massively by the use of biofuels. 45% of the corn alone in the United States is being used for fuel as opposed to food. And we are 40% of the world's corn supplier. So we've seen a massive increase in food prices as a result of the use of food as fuel. And along with that, a large increase in starvation of human beings. So I think it's something we can't really look at in a vacuum as far as just the benefit we get to climate. And in this country, that is the virtue signaling is talking about climate change, but nobody talks about the effect on fuel, of using fuel as food on the starving economies in the poor countries. As a result, I can't support something that really incentivizes the use of more biofuels. There are efforts in other parts of the world to look at second and third generation biofuels using cellulose as opposed to carbohydrates. We're using algae products. Technologies will not affect food prices and increase starvation in the world. As long as we stick to our current model of using edible food as fuel, I will always question whether that's something that is good for the entire world or just for some countries. So currently, I'm voting no on this.
Thank you very much. Members, further questions, comments, or concerns?
Sure.
Chair Onishi.
So I do have concerns about the limits on certificates, as well as using non-edible agricultural products as feedstock, or feedstock, and categorizing it as fuel so that there can be a tax credit applied to people who are utilizing those to help us generate electricity or other types of products. So with that said, at this point, I'll be voting with reservation.
Thank you, Chair. Members, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Senate Bill 2478, Senate Draft 2, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Belatti.
Reservations.
Representative Kobayashi votes no. Representative Onishi with reservations. Representative Sayama.
Aye.
Representative Takayama is excused. Representative Okimoto. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members.